Okay. The recording has started. Mhm. Uh, Okay, it's 12:05.
Pretty good. I don't know, Debbie, do you want to introduce the team or from the city? And then we can, or do you want me to just sort of start into general overview of things? You're muted, Debbie.
Sorry, just start with the general overview, please.
Sure, sure. So for those of everyone joining, I'm Craig Bachek. I'm with Navarro and Wright. We have a number of folks here from the city of Harrisburg. Debbie Rehart, Debbie, Joyce, Samantha, Danielle, primarily are the ladies being responsible for the three parks that we're going to be reviewing. Jennifer Fullenkamp is also with us. She's one of the lead designers at Navarro and Wright, a landscape architect, working with me on the project. You know, our focus today, I'm hoping everyone can see my shared screen, is to sort of go through the well, an agenda for today is one is, you know, generally the team that's working on the project, and then for us to go through each of the actually four parks, Reservoir Park, 7th and Radnor, Gorgas, which is sort of attached to 7th and Radnor, but separated by an existing street, and then Wilson Park. The agenda today is sort of to give a summary of where we're at in the process, how we got to this point, to provide an overview and summary of the comments that we received to date for each of the parks, I will note for everyone on this meeting that we're holding questions till the very end. So I appreciate everyone's patience in that regard. But if there are questions, there's also an email that you'll get at the last slide that you'll be able to respond via email if you're not comfortable saying something on as part of the Teams meeting. But we will have questions and time for questions at the very end. But as we go through each of these parks, my goal is to give an overview, give you a general summary of all the comments that we received from the public meetings that we've had at each of the parks, and then, sort of our next steps and our anticipated schedule moving forward. Anything that the city team would like to add before I move into the individual parks? No? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to start with Reservoir. And I presume that everyone can see my cursor. So this is sort of the existing aerial and survey for Reservoir Park. We have Walnut Street at the upper right corner. We have the existing amphitheater located here. The new chutes and ladders playground area has been added. The existing pavilion and Reservoir Drive, which is our primary area of focus, and an existing parking area of 44 spaces. We have prepared two options for consideration by the public and had an open house meeting and picnic at Reservoir Park on Saturday, the 22nd of July, July. And out of that, there was a lot of good feedback, a lot of good interaction with folks. But basically, a summary of those comments we received as part of that meeting was that there were divided comments relative to, do we save or demolish the existing pavilion? At the end of the day, I think it was determined that there's enough historic elements to that. The pavilion's in good enough shape, and there were certainly a lot of community-based fond memories of family events and so forth that happened there. That it's something we felt, people felt it was worth saving. People really liked the idea of the water park, the splash pads, and thought it should be enlarged. If we were going to, the two options were that if we save the building, the area might be a little bit smaller. But people said, if you're going to save the pavilion, we think we should enlarge that splash pad area as well. There was a need for additional restrooms, more shade areas, needed some swings and play apparatus for some of the smaller children. The chutes and ladders is geared towards a slightly older age group for children. So some parents and participants who were there felt that there was a need, and we agree that there was a need for apparatus for smaller kids. Needed some handicap parking at the pavilion. The existing handicap spaces are further away at the existing lot. And there was a need for more drinking fountains, trash cans, swings for adults and kids, and then park security and lighting. Now, some of these, as you'll see when we go into the other parks, are relatively consistent comments being made through each of the four parks. So the latest concept plan, which we're moving into construction documents that we're showing to you at this stage, is an incorporation of those comments that we received from the public at that July meeting. I'm going to break this into basically two sections, this being section 1 and the area to the right, section 2. The overall area, this is Reservoir Drive, the lineal area. This is the existing pavilion that we're looking at renovating and keeping. The goal with the existing pavilion is to look at converting the lower area, which is currently storage, into a combination of storage for facilities purposes and changing areas and restrooms to serve the splash pad area. Splash pad, is sort of here in the pinkish hue with identified, blue bubbling areas adjacent to that, and then To the immediate north or upper edge of that is the green infrastructure elements, so that we can handle stormwater and deal with some of the elements related to the functional elements of related to the site design. So when we talk about splash pads, we're looking at highly interactive, highly active play areas for children. It'd be a poured in place surface. We're looking at highly interactive space for the kids and families to enjoy as part of that splash pad experience and spray alley experience, if you will. The second half of Reservoir is sort of that lower section where we're adjacent to Suits and Ladders. To the left here is the splash pad area. And we have a number of seating elements. We're looking at a sort of a walkway that meanders through there. The yellow dots that you see, that you see here are light fixtures. For at night, we're looking at a new restroom facility in this area to serve not just the splash pad area, and Chutes and Ladders, but also the amphitheater. Looking at new picnic tables, overhead shade structures, and that green infrastructure, the rain gardens and bioswales. We're looking at plantings that would parallel the active area for the spray alley, and then allow us to give an opportunity to incorporate a story about stormwater, a story with Capital Region Water of how the water gets from DeHart Dam to Reservoir Park and then dispersed to the city. So we're looking at a very educational opportunity here to incorporate this splash area and spray alley along with the rain gardens and bioswales into an educational opportunity to educate the public a little bit more about why treating stormwater is important and how it directly affects people's drinking water. We're looking at play structures that are going to be on a play surface that'll be poured in place. We're looking at adding the swings, overhead shade structures to those areas to address some of the comments relative to shade. We're looking at amenities that include new restrooms. New restroom areas, handicap accessible picnic pavilion tables, drinking fountains like those off to the left here, and then solar powered light fixtures along the walking trails to allow for increased safety and security at night. We're also looking at cameras, solar powered camera system to help facilitate some of those security issues and concerns that people have had. So for Reservoir Park, again, very quick overview. New restrooms, new drinking fountains, stormwater improvements, splash pad area in the spray alley, and then a completely renovated and restored picnic pavilion with storage facilities underneath for maintenance purposes from this access drive, and restroom and changing areas to serve the splash pad area. So in a very brief summary, that's the status of Reservoir. We're in the process of continuing to develop construction documents for that, and still, soliciting and fine-tuning comments that we're receiving from the public. And with all these parks, we'll be moving into the next steps, which will include detailed selection of play equipment. So moving on to 7th and Radnor and Gorgas. This is sort of the overall 7th and Radnor Sports Park that currently exists. Gorgas is located just to the bottom of this sheet on the western side of Jefferson Street. Again, we had two concept plans that we had presented to the public. We had a sort of a Sunday picnic there on the 23rd of July, and we received very good feedback from those residents and participants who came out to provide comments. I think overall, the sort of summary of those comments included okay, we like the idea of pavilions. We think the pavilions that we have, the only pavilion we have is too small. We think we prefer the with two pavilions on it. Feel that there's a need for additional restrooms and drinking fountains. And while a complete water park may not be appropriate, a spray pad or some kind of interaction for or spray field for children would be appropriate at this park to cool them down in the summer. Looking at single rim basketball courts for some of the smaller kids, new swings. Folks really like the idea of an art corridor and an art wall, and that really involved combining, design one and design two of those two different concepts, and we sort of integrated those into the concept or document that I'll show you here shortly. Folks felt there was a definite need for more charging stations near the playground and the courts, so that they were accessible throughout the park. That's sort of consistent in all three or all four of the parks. Those charging stations are now an important part of our lives. There was a general consensus that closing the alley, Columbia Avenue, adjacent to Gorgas, made a lot of sense. There was the concept of a BMX bump track or skate park for some of the smaller kids, to incorporate that with some of the green stormwater infrastructure. Seemed to have merit. So we've sort of refined that concept a little bit more, and we'll show you that in the documents here. Confirmation that they need flashing lights to improve the crosswalks and the connections between Gorgas and the 7th and Radnor Park. The pavilion that is on Gorgas is used for play, the playground program in the summer. When it rains, it's obviously too small. So one of the multiple times we heard comments that the pavilion should be larger, and that there should be better security. There's need for hard paved areas for some of the kids to do the to do double dutch, to do other type hard surface games. So we've tried to incorporate those into the design. And again, the little guys on the half court basketball because the big guys use the full court. So it's important to keep those basketball facilities at the park, and then more grills around the facility. So this is the overall combination. Again, I broke this into, we have an enlargement for just the 7th and Radnor, and then an enlargement for Gorgas. But this shows how the two parks relate to one another, and especially right here at this pedestrian corridor. I apologize, but when I touch one button on my computer, it automatically goes. We have two pavilions. I'll try again. We have two pavilions and a strong axis, one across from the other. When we talk about a boulevard and a connection, it's this access way that we're talking about. We have off of 7th Street access to the existing parking lot. We have shifted that access to provide more room around the ball field area, and are looking at all new ball field. So when I say an all new ball field, we're looking new concession area, new restrooms, new ADA access from the parking area to the fields, new bleachers on both the visiting side and the home side, new shade structures over those bleachers, as well as new netting along Radnor Street to protect the neighbors on the outfield side or on the northern side of Radnor from foul balls that go across. New pitching pad areas, new pitching mound practice areas, new batting cages in the outfield, and a higher fence around Jefferson Street as an enclosure to the facility to better accommodate the amount of baseball play that happens at this field. Also, all new lighting. You'll see the yellow dots here that perforate throughout the design. Those are all new light fixtures, new lighting for the sports fields, new lighting for the plazas and walkway areas. In the outfield, I should say also that we're looking at this being a multi-purpose field where we can incorporate soccer and football. looking at those layouts in the grassed outfield of the baseball area so that we can get multiple uses out of that. Again, I apologize for that flipping. The plaza area itself in this location is access off of the parking area to a spray pad, and it's intended to be an interactive area where people can be engaged with the water. Looking at incorporating the art wall, more kids play area, a larger pavilion, 2 small basketball courts, a large full court. We've had desire by folks to add spectator seating for the basketball court and for us to keep the chess tables or provide new chess tables for people to play chess and some of the table games, not just for a summer program, but for evenings, and a free box or free library box to be incorporated as an element for this side of the park. So what that sort of looks like is a splash pad that would be very interactive for kids to run through, that are relatively simple when it comes to maintenance. Larger pavilion structures, an art wall that incorporates a variety of different ways to engage public art into the park. Those chess tables, a free book library, and then all new court facilities with porous paving around the perimeter so that we're sensitive to stormwater and some of the green stormwater infrastructure improvements that we want to do in all the parks, but then still providing, the a competitive basketball surface for basketball play. Those amenities also include new dugouts for the facility, the concession and press box, new drinking fountains, new restrooms, a new bleacher system. We anticipate those to be aluminum instead of, the wood has rotted over the years, so the aluminum would be a better long-term solution with overhead sun canopies over it to improve the conditions for visitors who are watching the games. When we look at the Gorgas Park, which is on the western side of Jefferson Street, we look at that pedestrian crossing and the need to do some flashing lights that would allow pedestrians to cross there. Also slow down traffic and doing some bump outs to reduce the distance that people cross from one side to the other side of the street. We're looking at vacating or eliminating the active use of Columbia Avenue and converting it into that skate park or BMX track area, along with green stormwater improvements parallel to that. Looking at a new pavilion that is larger than the existing one. It's almost double the size of the existing pavilion. New restroom facilities, drinking fountain, and then substantially new play area with new play equipment, swings, and so forth. And raised planters and container plantings to help support some of the educational activities relative to plant material and gardening that are associated with or can be associated with the summer programs. So what those amenities start to look like, again, larger pavilion, handicap accessible tables, new restroom facilities, drinking fountains. This is what we envision for that BMX skate park, is that undulating paved surface, and to the sides of that using the contours to take advantage of the ability to do some green stormwater infrastructure and some educational elements. The bump outs and so forth would look very similar to this bottom picture. We're looking at play apparatus on poured play surface materials, solar lighting, benches, and then raised planter gardens to be part of that educational component for the Gorgas Park amenities. So the other, fourth park that we looked at was Wilson. Wilson is nestled in the neighborhood, very well attended play area. highly active summer program. We have Rumson Drive on the left of this sheet, and the intersection with Crowden Road, and really no pedestrian crossings to speak of here. And again, we prepared 2 plans for the community to review and consider, and to give us feedback. And then based on those plans, we received a pretty passionate amount of comments relative to a number of things. One of the things that became clear in those 2 options that we had, one had a basketball court, the other looked at other amenities, but it became very clear that the community at this point in time does not want to see active basketball come back into the neighborhood. So no basketball court was one of their passionate comments. Also a need for additional benches, additional seating for parents, and some enclosed areas for some of the play areas as well. We had shown dog parks on the plans. Feedback from the community was, look, while we appreciate and feel that there is a need for dog parks in the city, they don't want it necessarily in their neighborhood, and we're concerned that people would not be picking up after their dogs, and concerned that there may be better locations for the dog park. We had shown volleyball courts. They didn't. Community did not like the volleyball court option, but did like keeping the fitness and exercise equipment for some of the adults. Had concern about security, especially at night, and the ability to walk through the park. And they liked the idea of the restrooms, but felt that it should definitely be locked for security reasons at night. Also desire to have better kids play apparatus in an area that had more contemporary or newer equipment with less safety issues, and consistent with the other parks, more swings was something that everyone seemed very interested in. Also, we had shown an option that looked at putting the pavilion in the center of the park. Became pretty obvious that folks did not want the pavilion there, that they like to keep it where it's at. And need for drinking fountains. Again, the pavilion should have electric power and charging stations. Concerned over parking, and the need to slow traffic on Rumson and all the adjoining streets. So we've tried to incorporate those concerns into our final design. And everyone liked to keep the trees, but they felt the city should look at some sort of camera security system for the ability to see underneath the canopy of those trees and to see around the park. They felt that the pavilion size was good, definitely not a desire to go any smaller than what was there. And they'd like to see some grass areas for use and so forth. Restrooms were considered an important part, but everybody was concerned about security of not just the park and restrooms, but security in general. So that sort of leads us to the design. I'm going to enlarge this, but just to give you context, we're looking at on Rumson, these green areas are green stormwater bump outs and areas where we can improve pedestrian access and street crossings. We're looking at speed bumps at a variety of locations to reduce speed, especially on the cul-de-sac, because people from what we understand, tend to drive in this direction, but think it's a through street until they get here and realize they can't go any further. And by then it's a concern because they're going too fast. So this park design incorporates comments that we received that involve a larger pavilion, that involve restrooms, involve a plaza and play area, handicap accessible ramp, new sidewalk around the perimeter of the park, handicap access at this parking spot at this location in the park off the cul-de-sac to provide access to the trail network. We eliminated the fitness facilities in the center of the park and strung those out, if you will, along the walkway system. We added swings, family type swings at the top overlooking into the park, larger children or older children play area with a poured play surface, younger children in this lower area, rain garden elements in the drainage ways, and a labyrinth and plinko ball drop in this pad area located and nestled into the trees. Looking at screening to some of the adjoining neighbors, and looking at adding in this plaza area sort of an art wall with a variety of other activities, including sort of battleship and guess who and large checkers or chess play areas, along with other focused amenities in this area. So give you a feel for what, and because of the tie to the green belt, we're looking at also providing the ability for folks who are having who have emergency repairs that are needed on their bikes, the ability to put air in their tires, so a bike repair station, a larger pavilion to accommodate the new, a new pavilion area at Wilson, and then restrooms that would be incorporated in that, and drinking fountain. When we talk about larger chess, this is, something that would be used as part of the summer program. The labyrinth and blinko ball have very similar concentric circles that work with one another. Blinko ball in the middle, and incorporating a walking experience to that when the blinko ball is not in use, and then some outdoor play apparatus, tilt a ball, art wall, again for a portion of that pavilion, solar lighting for the walkways, and new benches and seating, and then new play equipment and new play surface materials to be incorporated into the park. Again, as with the others, we're looking at incorporating rain gardens and working with Capital Region Water to prepare an understanding of how stormwater is important and impacts our lives, how it can be purified, those first flush, and how we can use some of the plant materials to benefit habitat areas for not just pollinators, but also birds, and so forth. So going back to this enlarged area of the park, we see a lot of that bump out stormwater elements being handled along Rumson Drive, and then through the park we have a large storm sewer system that runs through there. We're looking at doing improvements to the street that incorporate capturing some of that first flush flow off of the surface of the streets, and improving it before it goes through the parks or dumps into the capital area greenbelt. That really is a very quick summation of each of the four parks. The primary next step activities for the design team and for the city is really to continue to address and solicit public comments. This is our second sort of public meeting, if you will. So we're anticipating that as these projects mature, we're going to be refining them in response to people's comments. So it's important that if you have comments, that you let them be known. I think we've tried to listen very good to each of the areas where we've incorporated comments previously or solicited comments previously. The design team is continuing to work on the detailed plans beyond the sort of colored version of this, or the things that are needed to put the projects out to bid, the specifications and the various technical reports that support that. We're continuing to work with Capital Region Water on the green stormwater infrastructure details, and the impacts on their system. We have ongoing coordination with the utility companies as we're looking to provide new services to these facilities. And we're looking at finalizing the selection of play equipment and site items over the course of the next several weeks with the city staff. Along with that, wrapping up our NPDES permit, which is for erosion and sedimentation control. We'll be submitting those to Dauphin County Conservation District for their review, comment, and approval. And finally, we're looking at wrapping up our traffic impact reports relative to 7th and Radnor Street and Reservoir Park. Moving forward, the picnic style events that we had early on, which would have been last month in July, seemed to work pretty nicely to solicit feedback from the community. So we're again looking at those options in September to give you, I guess, the almost 100% version of the documents for review and comment, but to solicit feedback one last time before these documents go out to bid and before we're looking at awarding contracts to contractors. I should, I guess, let it be known that we're looking at really construction for all of these parks in 2024. Probably demolition perhaps starting late this year, but construction in earnest would be in through 2024. We will be paying a particular attention to the 7th and Radnor and Gorgas, so that we're not closing that whole area down completely, and we're able to have summer programs somewhere there through the course of next summer. That scheduling will be refined as we continue to work on the details of these documents. So that is that's a lot of information on these 4 parks. So I think we're going to, I think, open up here for questions. But I will again reiterate that at Harrisburg Parks at harrisburgpa.gov, you can email any comments you might have directly to that email address. It will go through city park staff and will be incorporated and reviewed as part of our design team meetings. But we're looking to get from everybody the relevant comments on the progression of the parks and any concerns you continue to have relative to those parks. So with that, I think I'm going to
We have a few questions that were in the chat, and I see that we also have a hand raised. I think if we could start with the individuals who had their question in the chat, because it was like early in the presentation. We'll just kind of go in order. And I see that Miss Melanie had a few questions. So if at your particular point in time, then you can get all your questions in. So we'll start with David Shiner. He was the first person to pose a question. Can you go ahead and unmute yourself? All right.
I don't believe that was a question, Joyce. He was just stating that he's here.
Okay. So then the next person was Melanie Cook. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. And
yes, good afternoon. I had a question as to whether or not this was a forum in which we could ask questions. Will this Zoom meeting be kept for future reference so that if individuals want to be able to view what was said who weren't able to participate today at noon, will they have access to everything that has been presented and the questions that are presented in the chat?
Yes, definitely, and Joyce can chime in on this as well. But yes, this meeting is being recorded. The goal of recording it was so that it's available then for everyone to see. We will be uploading the PowerPoint to the city, so all of the information will be available to be shared.
Okay, well, I tried to break my questions down. With respect to 7th and Radnor, there was discussion during the public meeting about possibly having 2 full courts. Initially, the presentation seemed to suggest there was going to be 1 full court and 1 pickleball. And I think given the demographic, basketball is definitely something that might draw more youth and young people to the area. So there was discussion about having 2 full-size courts, which could be used for multiple sports, and also possibly full court or half court. But today it kind of sounded like it was just going to be 1 half court and 1 full court.
Yeah, actually, it's 2 half courts, and the reason for the 2 half courts was that, you know, the feedback we got from some of the folks in the community was that with the full court, it pushes the little guys off. The larger guys come in, push the little guys off the court, and the 2 half courts provide the ability for some of the smaller or younger players to be able to play basketball at the same time some of the older guys are. You know, I think there's some logic to that. So that was the direction we went into, where we still have, you know, 2 half courts and 1 full court, which is, you know, very similar to what's there currently.
Okay, so they're going to be 2 half courts and 1 full court. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, I do think, obviously we're concerned about the younger kids, but we also have a very large number of teenagers in this area, and there are no courts beyond that court, other than the one that's at, I think, 4th and Emerald is a park. Another question with respect to 7th and Radnor is there was discussion about having a pedestrian walking area that would encompass the revisions to the park. Is that still in the plan?
It is, yes. You're looking at a perimeter walking area that would be, you know, that's going to be noted by mile so that you can track your distances and so forth. But yes, that's still incorporated.
All right. Reservoir Park, if we're going to keep the existing pavilion, there was some talk of possibly expanding the splash pad. How would that be accommodated if the building stays? Also, if what I heard is it's going to be a combined use, the lower area, to store large equipment, but also use it as a bathhouse, which makes sense to have a private changing area, particularly for young people, very young children. But how are you going to maintain the separation between having possibly lawnmowers and people trying to change toddlers?
Yeah, they would be 2 distinctly, you know, separate spaces. I mean, they're not going to be the same space. So, you know, as we move that into the next level of design, we'll share those plans with you so you can see the separation of what is needed for maintenance facilities and then what's going to be, in essence, the changing and restroom area. But they're 2 separately, you know, completely separate spaces.
All right.
And back to, I'm sorry, there was a question before that, though, that you had.
Expanding the splash pad area.
Oh, yeah. So we did expand the size of the splash pad area, both you know, longitudinally and then in width, and we pushed the green infrastructure improvements towards phase 2 so that we can get some additional width in that area. So we did expand it. If you remember, and I'm sure you do, the concepts that you saw at Reservoir Park, there was a lineal version, and then there was one that looked at using the foundation walls of the pavilion for splash pad area. Now, we don't have that kind of width, but we did enlarge the splash pad area, you know, substantially to provide more room for the splash activities.
Another question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Related to Wilson Park and the dog park. I think there was objections about placing, if there was going to be a dog park, placing it all the way at Wilson Park, which quite frankly borders Pembroke and Lower Paxton, which has a fairly decent size dog park at Brightville. Has the concept of placing a dog park somewhere been completely done away with? Also, with respect to Wilson, it sounds like there's no basketball, there's no volleyball. Is there anything for older kids to do at Wilson Park? I mean, is it just going to be like a play for small children and just kind of come and sit and relax? Or is there anything that will allow young people to have some physical activity there?
Yeah, we're going to have some of the play or the exercise apparatus that would be for, you know, younger and adult, and well, for multiple age groups, but intended for, you know, older children and adults. that'll be strung out throughout the park. But largely, we're not having significant active recreational elements there at Wilson Park.
All right.
No basketball.
I'm sorry, going back to 7th and Radnor, apparently the state building across the street, there is an area that is open to the public to park. There are no signs that say that.
Correct.
So was discussion at the 7th and Radnor about maybe communicating with the state. So when people come there for baseball games or the practices, they realize, because parking is limited, people need to know that they can park over there. And my final question related to the NPDES permit. That's necessary for each of these projects, or just
it's necessary when disturbance is going to be in excess of 1 acre in size. So it's definitely going to be required for 7th and Radnor. Reservoir, we're sort of on the fence with that numerically, just because of it's almost considered a maintenance item where we're removing the road and putting new impervious area in that. But we're anticipating that for all three, we're going to be just at 1 acre or larger. Radnor, we're going to be far beyond 1 acre. But so we're looking at NPDES permits for all three parks.
And the city will be applying for that. CRW is doing, it was my understanding that CRW was responsible for the stormwater retention there. Will the NPDES application be through the city or through CRW?
No, the city's going to be the applicant for the NPDES permit because it's city-owned property, so they would be the applicant. But you're correct, CRW would be managing and responsible for stormwater. So it's really the city's project as the owner. They need to be responsible for the application relative to erosion and sedimentation control, because that's really intended during the construction process to mitigate any dirty water from leaving the site, which is a little different than what the long-term mitigation of stormwater is, which becomes CRW's responsibility after it's built.
Usually with an NPDES permit, there's an ongoing discharge point that's monitored. That will or will not be part of this application.
Yeah, as part of the stormwater computations, we've analyzed the watersheds, and there will be discharge points for this. Correct, you're correct.
So Craig, I wanted to address Melanie's other question about the dog park.
Sure.
So highly unfortunately, because I was really looking forward to a dog park, there is no dog park in any of the CDBG CV projects. However, the city is well aware that citizens would really love to have a dog park, and there's a great need for it in the city. So we will continue to look for an area to put that and look for funding to be able to afford to put that park in.
The feds are sitting on a park that used to be a baseball field up by Italian Lake that might be a great site.
Yes, and actually we had talked about that. Unfortunately, we do not own it. It's owned by the federal government.
Yeah, that's why I said the feds are sitting on it. So if it's something
I didn't hear you say that.
might be a great opportunity to work in conjunction with them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Thanks, Naomi.
Next, we have Jeffrey Nichols, I believe.
Hello. Thank you for hosting this. And full disclosure, I'm with the National Civil War Museum in Reservoir Park. And so the question for you is there a plan to slow some of the traffic within the park? It's used as really a cut through, turns into a major thoroughfare. I wonder if that was part of what in the planning.
It is not part of the scope of what we're currently looking at. However, I think our traffic impact study will look at and will most likely suggest ways to slow down traffic throughout the park.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Next, we have Scott. It says Scott Guest.
Yeah, I'm familiar with getting down to the Greenbelt from Wilson Park. It's not an easy task. So I wondered how you're going to accomplish that.
Yeah, that we're not looking at significant changes to how that's currently being accomplished. We're looking at providing, a defined course and providing some amenities for those bikers who do that, but the physical connection to that is not much further beyond what our current park location is, other than, you know, providing, again, some amenities to that. It's not to say we can't look at that to look at improving that trail, but you're correct. It is not the easiest terrain to traverse to get to the Greenbelt.
Well, you have to go through the stream to accomplish it as well. It's
Correct.
I'm with the Greenbelt Association. I've been volunteering for 13 years. I've been restoring the Paxton Parkway, and you know, it's just I'm very familiar with the area, so I was curious how you'd accomplish that. Should I go to my next question?
Yes, thank
Sure.
you.
Sure.
Okay, I asked if the significant sources of air pollution are going to be addressed in Reservoir Park, specifically from the drive-through traffic and from mowing 35 acres of grass.
Yeah, unfortunately,
know-
Scott, no.
We know the city of Harrisburg has air pollution problems frequently. And, you know, one of the ways to address that pollution would be to this low hanging fruit that we have, you know, eliminating. I worked on the master plan for Reservoir Park years ago, and there was a plan to end vehicular cut throughs. We have signs that say no through traffic, which everyone ignores. You know, I apologize. I mean, this is a decade of frustration.
I
coming
understand,
out.
Scott. I know.
All right, well, I'll get off of it. Thank you. I like a lot of what I saw, though. I think that overall, recreationally, the improvements are going to be good, and from a stormwater perspective, I think they're going to be good as well. Not so much from an air pollution perspective.
Scott, can I talk for a minute? I'm the new sustainability coordinator. So what you're talking about might be out of the scope for this project, but definitely stay tuned because we're going to be having some public meetings about the sustainability and climate action plan coming up this fall. So that would be the time to speak up about air pollution and air quality issues. So we can talk further outside of this meeting.
It's nice to meet you, Danielle, and
Thank you.
I had a close relationship with the previous person in that position.
Yeah,
I'd
Chris.
love to meet with you and talk to you about things. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and just to add to Danielle's comment, also, Scott, so you're aware, for all three parks, the city has done a tree inventory, and along with that, provided some really great information relative to the amount of carbon dioxide being taken out of the air by the existing trees. We're looking at planting additional trees. So that is an item that, while we're not maybe direct, you know, the primary focus is in addressing what you're concerned about, we are addressing it in a secondary way. We are attentive to how many, you know, pounds of carbon monoxide are being taken out of the air. I mean, we are, you know, thoughtfully looking at some of the design decisions that do impact your concerns or address some of your concerns relative to traffic at Reservoir Park and the other parks.
Yeah, I operate. I have a Trips for Kids chapter and do bike rides for the Boys and Girls Club and other organizations like Melissa is on this call, and HICO. And, you know, riding through Reservoir Park on a bicycle on that straightaway which is part of the Greenbelt. It's very hazardous. You know, the vehicles go 50 miles an hour down that straightaway, and they don't slow down even when you're riding with 10 or 15 kids.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think next we have David.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you for the presentation. And I think it's fair to say we've been very grateful for how diplomatic the city and your corporation has been with these meetings. I'm one of the representatives and I'm a member of the Harrisburg Handball Group, the club that we have. And early in the presentation, you mentioned that that you are fine tuning the projects based on the comments received from these meetings and other public meetings. Can you address the expectations of the handball courts at Reservoir Park? You showed your design, the rendering, and it specified some zones, but it didn't get up to the basketball and handball courts. Can you talk about what they're going to do with the handball courts, what expectations we have, please?
Yeah, at least for purposes of our project and this project that we're talking about, we're really at Reservoir talking about the Reservoir Drive and the Spray Alley component of it. We were not the scope of this project does not involve anything at the handball court area, nor does it include the basketball court area at Reservoir Park. I don't know, maybe Debbie or Debbie, you can chime in on that.
So that's actually considered phase 3 of the Reservoir Park master plan implementation. So we're getting ready to start or I should say, finalize the design for phase 2, and that will be phase 3. We are at the process of writing grants to be able to fund that. I would expect that probably 2025.
For clarification, 2025 that we're writing grants or 2025 to begin development?
To implement, to construct.
To implement. And I've had the pleasure, for full disclosure, to meet with Ms. Debbie and with other folks at Parks and Rec and the mayor's office. So thank you. With that being said, and I can take the meeting offline later. And for everyone else to know, there's a conversation or at least a plan for 4 one-wall handball courts or 3 one-wall handball courts and a 3-wall handball court, which is pretty much up for discussion. That would take up the space of 2 of the existing tennis courts that are currently not in use at all. Is there anything that we can do? We have a number of handball players and members of the association and of the youth league. Is there anything that we can do to assist with that? And we have some backing with the United States Handball Association as well to help guide the implementation and the development of the courts, to assist with continued consulting, or to just be a part of it, because we don't expect to close our eyes and open our eyes and expect courts the next day. How can we help?
So once we have started towards the process of the funding, and if you know of any additional funding, we generally go DCNR funding or DCED. If you know of additional funding, please let me know. But definitely you would be at the table when we get a design consultant on board, probably late 2024, to help with that design.
Okay, help me out with my acronyms, my DCNR and DCED. Because I was going to say we have help from the county and the state. Are those one of each?
So yes. So the state is the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and also the Department of Community and Economic Development.
Okay,
so
we can definitely talk offline, because we do have verbal help from our state rep, from the county, and from the state. Some of it before the pandemic, some of it shortly after. It's there, but we haven't implemented anything because it's a lot of wait and see. What's the city going to do so the county and the state can help, and back and forth, and I'm kind of in the middle. So anything we can do to help pull that trigger or get something in front of them to do some matching funds. I was told that like most other projects, they can pull from gaming to assist with this.
Yes.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Craig, thank you for the presentation. Debbie, thank you for the clarification. And hi, Charla. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, David.
Oh, shoot. She's on mute.
Yeah, I'll give my time to Charla. Yeah, please unmute.
Hi, did you want me to go now? I had my hand up. I wasn't sure.
Charla, you're next. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Dave. great to see you, and I'm glad you're still pushing that handball court. Thank you for the presentation. Had an opportunity to be at Wilson Park yesterday for a family gathering, and I was quite disturbed, to say the least, about the condition of the park, particularly for young children. I'm surprised that the city hasn't been already cited for or sued for the equipment and the gaps in the wood and all the other things. But I also wanted to go back to the discussion on Radnor Street. I'm sure most of you may or may not be aware that there's a huge basketball league that's run every year out in the Swadera Park area that is mostly attended by, and most of the people, the kids that are in it are from Harrisburg City. Swadera Township has not been over welcoming with this group. And it was always a league that was played at the Radnor Street Playground. So it's a little disheartening to hear that they're not considering having a full basketball court, particularly now that there is obviously some parking arrangements that can be matched with the new state building across the street there. I just think it's a disservice to our older children, and they are children. You know, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about and have been talking about is geared towards toddlers and small children. And we have a huge deficit in recreation for our teenagers and for our older folks. So I would really hope that folks, you know, we talk about all of the things that are going on in the community, you know, with violence and everything. Kids need to have a place to recreate in the city. And we don't have that. We're not offering that opportunity. So I'm hoping that we would reconsider at least expanding some kind of full court in the uptown area. I'm not sure. I know for Reservoir Park, it's always been an issue with parking, but you have to include in these plans what our youth can do. And right now, I'm not seeing a whole lot of that. So I just want to make sure that I put that pitch in, and I certainly would like to see the handball park, the handball association, that whole piece implemented, because handball was something that as a kid in New York, we played, my brothers played, my family played. So it's a sport that needs to be expanded upon and implemented as soon as possible. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. And next we have Steve.
There we go. Hi, everyone. Sorry I wasn't able to attend any of the previous meetings. I'm very new to all of this, but I know there's a community of people not seen behind me that have these same questions. I'm wondering, can anybody offer background on why the initial survey neglected to list the third most popular sport among teenagers in the United States, which is skateboarding? Anybody worked on the original survey that was sent out? And there was quite an extensive list of recreational opportunities, but very glaringly omitted was skateboarding. Any background or knowledge of why that was omitted?
Yeah, I'm not aware
Sorry.
of. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, there's no real reason for it, Steve. I'm sorry, it was just missed.
Okay, but it is the third most popular sport. It seems it's been neglected, to say the least, in this region. It is known Steelton does have a very minimal skate park that's of dubious construction, but it is somewhere for people to go, and it's under regular use. I believe anybody in Parks and Recreation in this area should be aware of the other regional skate parks, such as Reed Menzer Memorial Skate Park in York, at their Memorial Park, which sees very robust use daily, regardless of weather. I know a lot of these park locations are within, say, urban areas. It is the city of Harrisburg. Skateboarding is seeing explosive growth among Black and Latino participants when they're given the opportunity to do so. But that opportunity is not made available in Harrisburg. And it's very worrisome that, again, it was neglected from the discussion up to this point, through the survey at least. So I did see it was mentioned in reference to one of the parks, 7th of Radnor, I believe, at the Gorgas location. And in reference to that, it was mentioned a BMX pump track and skate park for smaller kids. Again, I'm not clear in following the designation for smaller kids? Why is this recreation and exercise opportunity relegated to smaller kids and not provided for teenagers? Or as Charlotte had spoken to, there's a significant need for recreational opportunities for teenagers and adults for exercise in the city as well. Why is this not on the table clearly as a modern amenity for a recreational and exercise opportunity?
Well, I can address specifically the Gorgas and the area that we're looking at there. The intent was to provide, I think when you're looking for perhaps a more competitive or more comprehensive skate park type design, we don't have the facilities or the available land in Columbia Avenue to be able to do that. We looked at a lineal version that was, I mean, it's certainly not limited to smaller children that or kids that would be using it. It's open for everybody, but it was not intended to have all the complexities or nuances of a more senior skate park per se. It was intended to be currently intended to be more in line for the younger children to use rather than I would say older teens. So I think it was what's currently being designed and is compatible with some of the other smaller children play apparatus at Gorgas is something that is in line with the current activities at that park. I think you're correct. I think there is a need for skate park activity in the region, and it is not was not part of the programming for these three parks, but we did incorporate a smaller version of that into the Gorgas Park area.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it being on the map, so to speak. It is in the discussion. I see in the comments in the chat that it has been brought up in the public meetings. Hopefully momentum continues. Reservoir Park would be a grand place for a showcase skate park of, a regional destination where people would come to the region. I know the off-kilter slopes there would cause some design complications, but it can be done, obviously. Moving on from that, regarding the splash pads, I mean, I see that's a hot trend, no pun intended. But I travel extensively in decades past for skateboarding. I mean, I've visited hundreds of parks across the country. And I've seen splash pads at some parks that do see robust use. But you referenced that they're, I think you didn't say low maintenance, but minimal maintenance, maybe you referenced. Cleanup is a big issue that needs to be addressed. I didn't hear maintenance. Maybe it's not the scope of these discussions, but some of the public parks in Harrisburg are minimally maintained to begin with. They're seeing better maintenance in recent years, I do believe. But at Reservoir Park in particular, the benches around the fountains are not weed whacked, so they're not conducive to sitting. Like, there's nice benches. You can't sit there because they're overgrown with weeds half the time. Trash is barely maintained. A splash park, what I've seen of their use at other parks is there's going to be diapers, there's going to be socks, towels, clothing, other wet trash strewn about. That's worst case scenario, but almost any splash park I've seen, there is wet clothing that gets left about. So maintenance needs to be an integral part of that discussion. Who's going to clean up the diapers at the end of the day, et cetera. Just putting that out there. So, thanks for the forum and thanks for holding the meeting. I think those are the only things. Oh, the plank ball at Wilson Park. Those things are neat, and like public chess tables are neat too, but people walk off with the balls. So, I mean, does everybody have to bring their own plank ball to the plank ball table, or how's that work?
Yeah, I think that was the intent, to at least have the facilities there, and then as part of the summer programs, the balls would be provided as part of the summer program.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sure.
That was all. Yep.
I think I got everyone who had raised their hand. If there's any other questions, now's the time to go ahead and speak up. Well, thank you everyone for your comments. And I will hand it over to Craig to go ahead and summarize. And
Yeah, so again, I appreciate everyone's comments and the feedback. We're going to continue to advance the project with the city team and incorporate those comments and feedback that we got from today's meeting. Again, please be aware of any email or Facebook notifications from the city of future events, but we're looking at September 15th, 16th, and 17th to be having those public picnic type meetings at the parks, again, to review and get feedback from the neighborhood. So I appreciate everyone's comments today, and we look forward to getting these projects under construction. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Good job. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.